Welcome, welcome to the Plus
Welcome.
SideZ podcast. Today,
Dearly
we'll be
beloved.
speaking to dearly
We're
beloved.
gathered here today.
If you're watching us on the YouTubes, you will see that I look a little crazy because one of our listeners sent us some new audio equipment, which is awesome, so that we could
Yay,
upgrade our
listener.
sound. Because we've been scrappy as hell, and now we're a little fancy. We're a little fancy. We're
upgraded.
growing
Tiny
like
bit.
we're growing a lot really fast. It's kind of
Yes,
crazy.
indeed.
Yeah. In a good way. We want to
Yeah.
help more people do more things. That is the goal. Now, of course, I'm talking to you as if you know me, but you may not. So my name is Kim Carlos, and this is the Plus Side Podcast, and this is Kat and Janine, and we're going to go into it in a little bit. But if it's the first time that you've come here, a little bit about where this came from. So the Plus Size Podcast was born out of a TikTok community that focuses on basically treating obesity and related diseases as a disease medically with medicine. I know it's crazy to think, but it's true. So this is taking a lot of getting used to, this whole microphone. Anyway, but it is. That's what we know. So we talk about things like GLP-1s. So like Mounjaro, Ozempic, Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, and these different medications and how they treat these diseases and how people are on basically an insulin resistant spectrum and why these medications work. And we bring on a lot of doctors to help us, really understand why these things are treating, these issues we've had for a long time and why we're able to get our lives back. And today is a very special episode because we have 3 doctors with us, obesity specialists, which is awesome. And we're going to talk about the disease of obesity. We're going to talk about these medications. And the biggest thing we're going to talk about is
Controversy.
what is GLP-1 compounding? Yes, because we know that is a very big issue in our community, outside of our community, right, is not understanding compound medications.
Janine and
And
I
a
are
lot
jamming.
of people, you are. Can you guys hear me over there? Because
Controversy.
I'm,
Yes,
I know.
we're singing the song. That's
We
why.
y'all
Said
hear
it
me?
at the same time. We were like,
Oh,
right on cue. It's like
Controversy.
controversy.
Like,
Dun, 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 dun. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. What am I going to do with you guys?
Yeah,
But yeah,
I have
it
the
is very
attention span of a gnat,
controversial.
so yeah.
It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. Yeah, because a lot of people don't know about compounding, what it is, what it means, all the things, all the 5 W's,
Right.
And sometimes how or why or whatever it is. So we're going to talk about that today because and I think the girls will agree with me, we are definitely in our community seeing us in a crisis. A lot of people have taken this medication, have seen it change their lives, and because of savings cards and the affordability and accessibility, like with shortages of this medication, people don't want to get sick again, or go back to the way they were and have their disease continue to progress. And so they need access to medications, and they have diseases and disorders, and they should have that with doctor oversight. And we need to talk about what that is because there are a lot of scams out there. There are a lot of unsafe compounding, things that you don't want to do, and best practices. And we need to know what that is. And so we've got some doctors that are willing to come forward and say, hey, listen, we're going to put our stake in the ground and we're going to tell you what equals safe, what equals sketch. Like, we need to know these things because this gray area is just not okay. Because we're talking about lives here. We're talking about lives. So that's what we're going to do today. Now that I just laid some heavy shit on ya. Sorry for little ears. Let's go talk about Janine. Hey, Janine. What's up? How'd you doing?
Hey, how are you?
Do your intro. Do your intro. What's up?
Oh, well, hey, I am the JMT. I'm Janine. Yes, because the world can only take one. The world can only take one of me. But I am currently on Mounjaro, and I just crossed my 6-month anniversary of being on Mounjaro. I can't believe it. Yay! And I'm a type 2 diabetic, as well as I have an autoimmune disease, Sjogren's syndrome. So, and I suffered from, and I still suffer from obesity. It's just being treated now, as well as my type 2 diabetes. And as an added bonus, we didn't even realize that Mounjaro would help with the side effects of Sjogren's syndrome. So that's me, and I'm a flight attendant too, so I fly around the world.
That's right. And next time you have to bring your Delta Barbie. That's a rule. Gotta have the Delta Barbie. Every time we talk about this, it's like you're scared to go in your basement. I'm so confused.
No, but I mean, Delta Barbie is like so precious, and I'll bring my other Barbies because you all know that I'm like utterly obsessed with Barbie. Utterly.
Janine, I want Delta Barbie. Anyway, I digress. I want to see her so
Delta
bad. She
Barbie.
has two.
I'll bring Delta Barbie.
Okay. Thank you.
That makes me think. I'm doing inventory. Like I don't have Barbies, but I have Funko Pop dolls. I'm gonna get my husband Sanford and Son, Fred Sanford and Lamont. I'll bring them out.
I mean, I'm not even following so much, but it might be good.
Journey.
So
yeah, you listen. I guess I'm an elder Gen Zer, but my dad used to watch Sanford and Son every night when we got home from work. So anyway,
listen, Kat, you're older than me. You're a solid X.
I am. I must be an elder Gen Xer.
Sanford was a staple, though. Sanford and Son was a staple. I never really watched it until I got older. I didn't watch Cooley High until like 10 years ago. Don't judge me.
No.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm really into the Funko Pop dolls, and my husband spent.
All right, I'm gonna have to see it.
You have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doll time with the Plus SideZ. It's happening on the next episode. Please show up. It'll be big deal. It's episode 20.
And
I don't know who's coming on yet.
My husband spent extra money to find Lamont. You could not find Lamont, but I got Fred Sanford, and Lamont was very hard to find. Lamont is Fred Sanford's son in the TV show. Anyway,
right?
Okay.
As we used to say in the '90s, make it a blockbuster night, Kim.
Oh my goodness! I miss Blockbuster. I do.
Blockbuster was the move on Friday nights. Like it was like Club Blockbuster because if you were cool and you had if your family had a Blockbuster membership, you could tell me
if you were cool. I don't know if you were even cool back then, though, JT. I don't know.
I need to go find it. But anyway,
all right.
I don't want to get too sidetracked. We've got it.
Yes.
We
do.
We have some great professionals waiting on us. Hi, I'm Kat. I'm Kat Carter
at
Kat Carter 7 on TikTok. Kim, you mentioned this at the beginning. Butt stuff. I have not done it yet this week, but just you wait. Butt stuff with Kat. Anyway, listen, I have the ADD real strong, so. But Kim mentioned, hey, thank you for the followers, our listeners, and yes, we want to thank. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody, all these ladies here. I'm doing it up here,
dearly beloved.
and also dearly beloved, and also all the the doctors, professionals, experts, our community members, everybody that comes to the show. We would not have a show, we would not have a podcast, we would not be exciting if it weren't for them. So
yes. Yes, absolutely. It's community driven. That is for sure. So yes, thank you to the community. And this is a service for the community by the community. So this is great. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about compound today. So I'm going to invite in our special guests. Okay. Everybody hang tight. We're going to go one at a time. Bam. There's one. It's Dr. Myra.
Whoa.
Bam. There's two. It's Dr. Rosen. Bam, there's three. Dr. Adam Ripley. Welcome to our scrappy podcast. How are you guys?
Good.
Well, we're going to definitely do a panel today, but it's meant to be an open discussion. We want to learn. The girls and I want to learn. And I know our community is just starving for knowledge on this area. So anything we can do to help guide people would be really great. So if we ask a question, you guys want to jump in, you have a different opinion, that's great. Honestly, different perspectives here are really important because people need as much information as possible from different points of view, right? So they can make an educated decision, especially about something that has to do with their lives. Okay. So we'll get started, but I would like to kind of do a round robin so you guys can introduce yourself for those that maybe don't follow you or don't know you. So how about we just start from here over? So we'll say, hey, Dr. Myra, Dr. Myra, tell us all about you.
It's nice to meet you guys again.
Of course.
Live. I was on here a couple months ago, but thanks for bringing me back.
Yeah.
I run Join Mochi, which is telehealth obesity medicine practice. So.
Yes. Great. We're so excited to have you. And Dr. Rosen, tell us about you.
So great to be back with you ladies. I am Dr. Daniel Rosen. I am a bariatric surgeon. I've been helping people manage and control their obesity and diabetes for almost 20 years now, believe it or not.
Oh,
and just real happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Dr.
you.
Ripley, tell us about you.
Yeah,
You're new to
thanks for
Plus Size. You haven't been
yeah.
here yet.
Nope, haven't been here.
Welcome to
Thanks for the
Plus
thank you. Thanks for the invite. Dr. Adam Ripley. I'm a PharmD pharmacist with Aquita Pharmacy. We do sterile and non-sterile compounding in all 50 states, and jumping on with Dr. Myra, the consulting pharmacist with Mochi, advising on pretty much everything pharmacy, from oversights to compounds to regulation to whatever questions come up.
Awesome.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, this is going to be a
Love
great
it. Oh,
show.
we're going to
Yeah.
learn so much. I'm
Oh,
so
this
excited.
is going to be good. And can I just say,
Yes.
I've been nerding out for the past week about this. Like, this is the highlight of my week.
We really do. I think it's really what's so crazy about like this medication, and we talk about it a lot, obviously, is the reason we're so obsessed about it and we want to know so much about it, fascinates us so much, because it changed our lives. You know, like when you're sick your whole life, and then the things that you struggle with get turned off just like that.
Yeah.
It's impossible not to think about it and be excited every single day. Like
Fascinating. It's absolutely
it's
fascinating.
just fascinating. Yeah. And it's just, what else could I do with my brain now that it is not just completely consumed without thinking about food? And you know what the answer is? We start a podcast. We help our community. We help people.
Yeah.
You know, like it's amazing. Like what you going to do when you make people better? Like this is the kind of stuff that happens, you know? So that's why. Yeah.
This
is why.
This is amazing. And can I just say, from a type 2 diabetic, this is the only medication that has worked to lower my A1C. This
That's
is
really
the
good.
only med.
The only one. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we are so happy. So let's get started. I think that we should assume that people know nothing, and start with deciding what a compound is, what compounded GLP-1s are, because I don't think they'd be watching this if they didn't know what a GLP-1 is, but maybe we explain that a little bit first. You know what? We will. Dr. Rosen, you have had a couple of videos, I know, specifically about what GLP-1s are and how they work. Could you give us a general overview to start, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper?
For sure. So GLP-1s are a class of hormones that are released physiologically in the end of the intestines. They are a evolutionary adaptation to prevent people from losing calories. Calories historically, evolutionarily, were at a premium and they were hard to come by. And when you would get a large calorie load, there would be a big kill or something like that, and you would have all this food to eat. And of course, there's no refrigeration, so you would eat as much as you can, but you can overwhelm the GI tract in terms of processing and absorbing those nutrients and calories. So the intestines developed the trick to stop you from eating once you've hit that limit of overwhelming the system from a metabolic perspective. So as food reaches the end of the intestines, special cells called L cells produce GLP-1. And that GLP-1 enters the bloodstream and starts to impact both the brain and the rest of the GI tract. For the GI tract, it slows things down to prevent things from sort of being pushed through. And in your brain, it can create a sensation of being like so full, if you eat anything else, you'll vomit.
Yeah.
You know, that's totally a brain creation. It's a fallacy. It's a myth. Joey Chestnut, the hot dog eating champion, says fullness is a state of mind to be pushed through.
Wow.
And that couldn't be more true, because it's just the brain tricking you into thinking like there's food here. There's no food there. It's just, that's the way your brain gets your mouth to stop having more food put into it. And so another term for it is the ileal brake, because the end of the intestines is the ileum. And GLP-1 eventually was identified, actually following bariatric surgery research, because it was these rapid fullness and improvement in diabetes that people saw after gastric bypass before they even lost any weight, totally independent of weight loss. Because when you reroute the intestines, the food sort of gets to the end really quick because it's starting in the middle instead of starting at the beginning. And they identified these hormones that were spiked called GLP-1. And then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies came in and began to synthesize and produce them, market them, and sell them.
Of course.
And it's a revolution. We never saw weight loss medications like the GLP-1 class of medications, originally targeted at diabetes management and with weight loss as a side effect. And as these medications have gone through different iterations, they have gotten better and better, I think specifically from a weight loss perspective. And it seems that the weight loss achieved for non-diabetics can be even greater than what we're seeing for diabetics.
Yeah.
And now they've been, of course, branded and marketed directly as an obesity treatment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and all the girls and I all take Mounjaro, which we know is hopefully going to be FDA approved in the fourth quarter of this year for obesity. So we hope that's the case. But that's another conversation about off-label use. We'll have that for another day. But that was a really good answer. I want to make sure that the other doctors didn't want to join in and share anything, a different perspective, or how they want to explain it. No.
Honestly, that was extremely thorough.
I thought it was too. But I just wanted to make sure you were okay with it too. Okay, good. I thought it was super good too. Okay, so next question is, we know that there are some people, and people who are watching probably do too, that are unable to get their medication either because of accessibility or affordability. And there are what we call compound options. Now, there's a lot of stuff about what is a compound and what's it made of, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more. But if you could just give us like a general answer, maybe we start with Dr. Adam Ripley. If you could tell us, like, what is a compound medication?
So a compound drug, or a compound for short, is basically where you put two things together and you make something new out of it. It's really about that simple, or two or more things. I mean, you can take two things, or you can take 3 or 4 or 5 drugs and put them together, and you make a compounded drug product. In that fashion. So it's really just, it pretty much is that simple, just bringing those things together and creating something new.
Okay. When people are choosing to have a compound pharmacy or use a compound pharmacy, I think a lot of times we at least we here in our community, especially from our doctors, like, start going through a doctor. Don't just go directly to a pharmacy because you need like a doctor's care. So I'd love to know, like, Dr. Myra, like, could you tell us, like, what kind of blood work do you want to have done before you're going to be starting like on a GLP-1 medication?
Sure. I think for our patients, we ask everyone for PCP information just because we're really an adjunct to your PCP. Your PCP should still be doing all of your regular blood work for all of your other medical conditions.
Okay.
For our patients, we check A1C, which is basically an indicator for insulin resistance and a screening tool for prediabetes or diabetes. We check thyroid labs, which is TSH, basically to check for any hypothyroidism that might be leading to weight gain. And then we check creatinine to make sure that your kidney function is normal before we start anybody on a GLP-1, because you might have an adjusted dosing schedule with that. And then a lipid panel just to check for cholesterol. That's also a really helpful tool for as you lose weight to recheck, because you might see an improvement in labs before you're seeing a ton of weight change. So,
yeah, awesome, cool. Okay, Kat, I think
question.
your question.
I
was
do.
next.
So, why are compounds so much cheaper? And also adding into that, how cheap is too cheap, and where should we look for these red flags? So that's a good one to think of. And I would assume that maybe Dr. Ripley, Dr. Myra, or any one of you, but I would assume Dr. Ripley, you probably have the most thorough answers there.
Well, it's kind of has a lot of layers to it, I guess. You kind of look at why, maybe backing up a little bit and maybe thinking about why are the pharmaceutical products so expensive, maybe not why the compounded ones are so cheap, but maybe backing up a little bit and looking from the pharmaceutical product. In general, pharmaceutical companies apply for and get a patent on a medication, and that is X number of years long, 10, 15, 20, depending on the patent and how they, when they get it and that kind of thing. And basically, we have a free market, and they can charge what they want to based on the demand that's out there. A lot of times, what insurance companies will pay for it, what the population will pay for it. They back in a lot of their development costs over the years, a lot of their research, a lot of their developments that might not have gotten to the market. A lot of those things are layered in and rolled into the cost of a drug. And then they've got what they would say, let's say maybe once the patent is out there, they might have maybe a 10-year window. They would call it a small window to recoup a lot of that investment that they've put in. So they would argue that we're paying for the research and we're recouping our costs and we're making a profit so that we can kick it down the road for the next big thing to come out. So
right,
a lot of free market forces, a lot of research, a lot of things like that on why like the pharmaceutical products are so expensive. So on the flip side, when you look at a compounded product, compounding pharmacies don't have that layer or extra layers of research and years of overhead costs and research and development rolled in. Compounding pharmacies, for the most part, really base their pricing on what the material costs, what their overhead is, what the employees' time, pharmacists, technicians, employee time, cost of goods, cost of compliance, a really smaller overhead number when you start looking at an overall product piece. So for the most part, a lot of the drug products themselves aren't that expensive. A lot of it is in the labor of putting it together, the compliance to make sure that it's safe, it's accurate. And then, so that's I think where you get a lot of the cost and the price difference between, say, something that's compounded and then a larger pharmaceutical brand name product that's on the market today.
Gotcha. And so what would be, I guess, maybe a red flag of how cheap would too cheap be?
Like if you hear someone saying $100, like, is that scary?
Well, I think
that would,
probably the same old adage. The adage, if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Perfect. Yep.
So if you're, if it's somebody's advertising it for $30 or $90, or if you think it's too good to be true, there's probably something behind it. There's more to that story. So if you think it's too cheap, you're probably right. It probably is too cheap.
Yeah.
It's hard to put a hard number on it, but I think you got to put that. You got to have the smell test, I think.
Yeah. Sniff test. Yeah.
Totally agree. And building on to that, so we're on what I'm seeing on TikTok with some of our users is the reconstitution and the safety of doing it at home. Is it safe to do it? I know, right? This is for all you all cutting on. Yeah, just chime in. Is it safe to do it at home? Is it? And also,
I have a major problem with this.
All right, you get to answer it.
I'm just going to jump in on this one because,
thanks, Dr.
this
Rosen.
is crazy to me.
You're just
crazy.
Listening. You could hear Dr.
The
Rosen's
notion
eye rolling.
of a patient taking a powdered version of a medication and doing their own dilution in order to come up with potentially the recommended concentration, presuming they don't screw this up. And we have patients, I'm sure Dr. Myra would agree with me, we have patients that make dosing mistakes all the time. You have patients that get sent the wrong medication, so they give themselves a 15 milligram dose instead of a 2.5 milligram dose, and they're vomiting for 3 days, need to be in the emergency room for hydration. And that's without them mixing it. You have patients who dose themselves, instead of 50 milligrams, they dose themselves 0.5 milligrams, or instead of 50 units, they dose themselves 0.5 units because 50 units is 0.5 ml. So they may give themselves like the tiniest sliver of medication in a insulin syringe and then wonder why it isn't working.
Yeah.
And so that's without mixing it themselves. So the idea that a patient would be injecting sterile water or sodium chloride into a vial of powder and mixing it up, that's a complicated thing for me to do myself. And that's something I would do, let's say, for Botox. Botox comes in a powdered form and has to be reconstituted in the doctor's office. I think it's really dangerous for patients to be their own pharmacist, in essence.
Yeah.
And do that diluting. I think it will either result in a number of people getting too little medication or a number of people getting too much medication. it
What about the
speaks to,
sterility of it? Like in terms of like doing it at home? I've heard different
presuming
things. I'm
that
not sure if that's valid, but
they're providing a vial of sterile saline or sterile water, and they, and are using a sterile syringe, I don't think the sterility is as big of an issue. I just think the possibility of errors is much higher. And I think that it speaks to, like, if you're getting a vial of just powder, and I know people do it, but I don't know who does it. So if someone does do this and they want to chime in, I'm perfectly happy to hear that perspective. But it speaks to a system that isn't really being thought out from a patient-friendly perspective. I think these medications should be provided individually, meaning like your name should be on the vial and your dose should be on the vial, and the concentration of that medication in milligrams per ml should be on that vial, and the dosing instructions 0.5 ml subcutaneously weekly should be on the vial.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting all those things, then I think you need to look at who's providing your stuff and have a high degree of suspicion and concern.
So it should be like what it is when you go to the pharmacy and you have a script, because all those things are usually on your script, right? Is your name,
Right?
The ID, and all of those things you just mentioned. Okay.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's somebody who's compounded stuff in a sterile environment for 10, 12 plus years. I think sterility, is an important issue. I think because you never know what environment people are doing this reconstitution in. Are they using sterile product? Are they reconstituting something, putting it in the fridge and pulling 2 or 3 doses out of it over a month? What are they introducing into the vial? If you're going to do it from maybe a one-time deal, and you got sterile water, and you got the alcohol swabs, and you're doing it pretty carefully at home. Yeah, I would agree. Probably sterility might not be that big of an issue, but I think as you start to layer on the complexity, are you getting multiple doses out of the vial? Where are you doing it in the home? From pets, kids, feces, and cats litter everywhere. You just start layering in the issues, and then if you're putting it in a vial and you're just allowing it to sit there and fester over a week or a month, then I think you start to look at what issues could you run into over a longer period of time.
Yeah, that's pretty dangerous.
Wow.
It's unrelated, but it made me think of this. So my husband recently had a pituitary tumor, and he had surgery to have it removed. And one of his doctors told him a horror story of somebody. So after you have a pituitary tumor removed, you have to wash your sinuses out with distilled sterile water and some solution. And they told him there was a man, I don't know what state it was, but he used tap water, and he passed away because something grew in his head. So,
oh my gosh,
it's real. Don't mix your stuff at home
with tap water.
And people,
with tap water.
Tap water.
Little tap
And
water.
people are cheap. They'll keep using the same syringes over and over, and you start layering in risks that just don't need to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
That makes sense.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
We want you to be here and alive.
Yes, please.
Skinny and dead. That doesn't help.
No, like the whole point is to get better. Let's not get
Exactly.
worse. Let's not get worse.
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead, Kat.
Well, to add into that, I know we had a little extra to the question. Is it better to have your prescriptions for the compound, like either have it shipped or just pick it up? Is there really a big difference with the safety in that as well?
I think it depends on how it's. Shipping is great. Shipping works. It just depends on how it's shipped. Is it shipped appropriately? If it needs to be shipped refrigerated in a refrigerated temperature, are you getting it at a refrigerated temperature? Heat degrades these type of drugs, these peptides, proteins really quickly. So if you're out in Arizona and it sits out in the UPS truck all day long in a solution and it gets hot, you start worrying about potency. So I don't think it's necessarily is shipping better than picking up. I think it's the matter of how it's delivered, and is it shipped correctly, and is it being stored correctly, and are you receiving it in a manner in which it should have been stored, and that there's not, and how long did it take it to get, did it come overnight? Did it come 2 days? Did it go out to Arizona and then come back to South Carolina and then go back to Missouri? And you start to worry about, exposure to temperatures and potency and that kind of stuff. So I think it's more important about how than how it's delivered rather than the manner in which you pick it up.
And what about if it should come from your doctor, or if it should come from, God forbid, like, I'm sorry, but like a day spa, not a day spa, like a med spa or like a weight loss clinic. Like, I mean, in terms of like buying it there versus like how, again, like Dr. Rose was saying, like specifically it being from you, is it a best practice for it to come directly from the compound pharmacy? I hear lots of different things. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, in my practice, we do a lot of shipping. Shipping's great because, again, I agree with Dr. Ripley. It's based on how it's packaged, the reliability of the delivery. It's all about access from my perspective. And if you can get medications easier, reliably through a shipping process, I'm all for it. We also have medications that we give to patients in our office. And the situation might be that someone, is very motivated to start the medication in the moment. We would order that medication, but we would offer them the opportunity to start the medication in the office. And that's me writing a one-time prescription and then filling it out of product that we have in the office. And the point is, as compared to, say, a med spa, I'm the doctor. I'm administering the medication. And I think when you look at social media promotions and med spas trying to capitalize on the GLP-1 craze, you are dealing with healthcare environments that get uncomfortably sketchy. And you really, as a rule of thumb, I would say if you can't, at a minimum, Google the name of the doctor who will, in the end, be the person responsible for your care, be the supervisor of your care, and can't have a conversation with that clinician. And of course, it doesn't need to be a doctor. It can be a PA or an NP. But if you can't have a conversation with that clinician who is overseeing your healthcare and administering these medications and prescribing these medications in order to have your questions answered, and in order to report complications or negative reactions to these medications and seek advice and care, then I think you're exposing yourself to problems. And that, for me, is a big red flag. If you can't identify who is the healthcare provider, not just someone working at a med spa. And even if it's a nurse or an MA, I think you have to be able to identify who is the healthcare provider, who is ultimately taking responsibility for your care.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
I know med spa directors who don't set foot in the med spa ever.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately, if you were getting a prescription, it should be coming either directly from the pharmacy and the pharmacy that you are getting it from, or the provider's office has their own in-office stock from a pharmacy they ordered it from the pharmacy and they're the one administering. But pharmacies have just so much more oversight in this space that I think that it's an extra layer of safety that that there is a board of pharmacy that is really placing checks and balancing on this. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you all when we were talking about the delivery method of compound medications, is it best to have them shipped overnight, or is there a maximum shipping time frame that you all will ship? Because we're seeing on TikTok and other social media platforms where they're receiving their compound medication overnight, and then their unboxing videos.
Yeah, I would say that the standard is probably overnight. That's probably a pretty good rule of thumb. But also it depends on what dosing form, what are you getting? Is it an injectable? Does it need to be stored in the refrigerator? Is it a shelf stable, liquid or a tablet or, whatever it is? I think probably at a minimum, definitely no more than, a 2-day kind of FedEx or 2-day kind of delivery. If there's some temperature control in the box, if there's, some, particularly in the hotter months, but not necessarily just the hotter months, but in the hotter months, are there ice packs in there? Is it able to be temperature controlled from a delivery perspective? Anything much over that, particularly if it's an injectable drug, overnight's probably the way to go. Much over a day or two, even some of your best shipping at that point probably is not going to keep it at a really good consistent temperature. So that would be what I would think.
And I would add on to that, just because it comes 5 days later, or 7 days after your visit with the physician, doesn't mean it took a week to get there. There's like processing times. And,
good point. So like when it actually ships is what you want to be looking for, is the date it's gone. Not when the
1
label's
to 2
created, but
days
when it's
would
gone.
be standard.
Yeah.
And a lot of the good pharmacies will kind of keep you updated throughout the process of when your prescription was in, where it's being processed. You'll get a shipping notification of when it's going out. So, maybe Dr. Rosen had written the prescription 2 days ago or 3 days ago, but it would ship out tomorrow. You should be working with places where you're getting those notifications along the way, so that you're in the loop on how it's being processed and where it is in the workflow, if you will, and that you get the tracking when it gets shipped. So that, hey, it got shipped out yesterday and I'm expecting it tomorrow. So your really good ones should keep you that much in the loop on the workflow from start to finish.
Okay.
All
right.
Okay. Well, and thank you all for that. And we're still on the actual pharmacies, and Dr. Myra touched on it. But I guess my question, and I have it's a 3-parter, but I'll just do one at a time. But are compound pharmacies regulated, and by who are they regulated, and how do you define regulated?
I think that's an excellent question, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and pharmacy in general is probably one of the most regulated professions in healthcare, if you look at it from top to bottom. And then compounding pharmacy, when done correctly and done the right way, has even more layers than your traditional pharmacy does. So just kind of a quick kind of layout of it. So, all pharmacies are required to be licensed in the state where they reside. So if you're in North Carolina or California, you're required to be licensed in that state by that state board of pharmacy. And then in each state that they practice in or ship to or do business in, they are licensed in each one of those states as well from a pharmacy perspective. So when you look at a compounding pharmacies are guided kind of internally by their standard operating procedures, their SOPs, which they are put together and are kind of dictate what they do and have systems that they follow on a daily basis. They're registered, they're licensed by their individual state board of pharmacy. They also must be registered in any state that they ship to. They can and are inspected by the FDA. So you've got that state level, and then you've got the federal level of supervision of regulatory authority. The FDA didn't used to go into as many compounding pharmacies as they do now, but a lot of times what you'll see on state inspections is the state board inspector will come in with 1 or 2 FDA inspectors, and they'll do joint inspections. But the FDA has every right to come into a compounding pharmacy and regulate, and making sure that they're following the standards that are set up from a federal level and a state level. And then in addition to that, you've got USP standards, which are your compounding standards for non-sterile and sterile, and how things are done, how things are sterilized, how things are compounded. Then you've got your accreditation bodies, your PCABs, your NABPs. So you've got a lot of different layers there of regulatory oversight and just kind of daily good practices on a compounding pharmacy. So there's a lot of layers there and a lot of regulatory oversight, really from the state to the federal level. And then you've got kind of a newer pharmacy designation, which is which is called a 503B, a 503B compounding pharmacy. And those pharmacies are a little bit more regulated and inspected more frequently by the FDA. It's not necessarily a state board type situation. It's more of an FDA run type pharmacy designation. And they're treated a little bit more similar to a pharmaceutical company than they are a standard compounding pharmacy. And those 503Bs are the ones that would ship directly to the physician's offices for office use medications, as opposed to a lot of your other compounding pharmacies, which are a different designation. They need a particular script for a specific patient to send to that specific patient. So they're very patient specific that way.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. And my next question is, our next question is why are compounds available in shortage? And is it legally, available when it isn't a shortage?
Yeah, so and that really just comes down to the FDA part of the regulatory component. The FDA sets out guidelines on how things can be compounded, when they can be compounded, in addition to state guidelines and some of those other bodies who I was talking about, like the USP. But the FDA really controls a lot of what you can compound and when you can compound it. And the FDA pretty much says if the drug is on the FDA shortage list, it basically means it's unavailable. Not that it's not available, but it hits a shortage, it hits their official shortage list. And they then allow compounding pharmacies to help make up that shortage deficit while something is on the shortage list. So at that point, you can make, and we'll kind of get into a little bit into the weeds here on compounds, but the FDA then allows you to compound an exact copy of a branded drug if it's on the shortage list, because then that's helped at seeing that we're helping to bridge the gap on the shortage, if you will.
Right. Okay.
Which is why compound medications have been able to sort of slide into the GLP-1 space.
Yeah, because of all the shortages. Yeah. And I can imagine, like, I just can only imagine that this will continue. Like, I'm hoping that it will be short-lived, of course, like, but I just, the demand is so high. It's so high. And if for specifically Mounjaro, if they get approved, for weight management, which we all think they will, in Q4, then that's just a whole nother indication and more demand. They're going, oh, that is safe. That is good. The FDA says, okay, then I think that's something, and also like in terms of being in the weeds, like this is for sure the episode for the weeds of the compound pharmacy. So have at it, Dr. Ripley. We would love all our listeners definitely want this.
Yeah, and you can go you can Google FDA shortage list. The FDA publishes it and updates it all the time. You can go in and see. It's not just GLP-1s that are on there. There's a big shortage of ADHD and stimulant meds like that. There's stuff that
antibiotics.
goes on, antibiotics, stuff that goes on and off those lists all the time. So it's a living, breathing document, and anybody can go check out and see what's on.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Rosen. No, you go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say that what's super interesting and I think novel about what's happening now in the GLP-1 space, which probably did not happen before, is that it's not really the medication that's in shortage in this instance. Rather, it's the supply chain involved in these complicated delivery mechanisms that these medications were sort of branded and packaged in order to facilitate easy delivery of the medication. So the companies sort of built themselves a trap by creating complicated delivery systems that then they were unable to ramp up to meet demand, because production of the medication itself is not nearly as limiting because you can just make it in mass, but you have to make each of these pens, in a factory, and that is really what can't keep up with demand. So you have a medication that's in shortage, but without a true shortage of that medication, it's the delivery system of that medication. And so compound pharmacies are able to come in and utilize that excess medication that isn't packaged. So when people say, like, well, where do you get that medication? The company says it's not from us. We're not delivering that medication. Well, what's actually happening is Novo Nordisk doesn't make their semaglutide. Like, they may have developed it and, configured it in the lab and then tested it, made a batch and tested it. But when it comes to mass production of things, they tend to outsource to subcontractors, typically in India or China. The mass production of these precursors and medications that then they have in a different facility, contracting facilities just shut down, right? It's like they still have production lines they want to keep open. They still have employees they want to employ. And so they're kind of building up this product, waiting for the big drug companies to buy it off of them. And it's completely conceivable that because the FDA allows compound pharmacies to distribute it or produce it, they can buy these precursor medications and then distribute it. It's kind of like, a designer handbag company that during the day they make, labeled items, and at night they make the same handbag but don't affix the name brand label, and it goes out in trucks and it's distributed.
On Canal
it's the
Street.
same on Canal Street.
Right on Canal Street.
It might be the very same handbag, but one is branded and one is not, because that factory wants to produce as much product as it can.
Yeah.
And that's a economic driving force.
That's a really good.
Wow.
Interesting was that recently Eli Lilly announced that the Mounjaro and Trulicity pens are the same device. They use the same internal components. And so as Mounjaro drives more and more demand, there's going to be a shortage of Trulicity coming as well, because it's the same pen. And then they also issued a report saying that they have a third-party manufacturer, like Dr. Rosen was saying, that does all of their peptide production in Europe, brings it in, and then they basically assemble this together, put it together in their factory, and then package it up and ship it out. So,
oh my gosh,
the supply chain issue that's holding everything up seems to be these pens, and the pens have like a mechanism to basically shoot out the medication without any kind of like electronic components or anything. So that's the whole issue.
Spring loaded.
Yeah.
But
I gotta say, I've used them all, and I think the one that's basic is just as easy. It's just as easy. Like,
let's
save the environment. One pen.
But what's super interesting is you see the way that these pharmaceutical companies manipulate the narrative.
Yeah, for sure
right?
they do.
In
That's
order
why we're talking about it.
demonize, they don't want anyone using compound medications because it takes sales away from them.
Yeah.
So in order to sow distrust over the medication, they're not going to like get into the nitty gritty of the fact that it's their subcontractors that are selling excess medication through other channels. They're just going to say, we have not provided compound pharmacies with our medication, which is technically true, but it serves to, invalidate the source of safe medication that compound pharmacies could possibly be delivering to patients.
Right.
So when you get these medications and they're not like matched, dose for dose. So like if I get semaglutide versus getting Ozempic, and I do 0.25 of Ozempic, and then I say I get some sort of milliliters or a different type of dose, like because they've added in B12 or something. One, why do they do that? Like I'm sure there's a reason. And two, like, how do I know what it is I'm actually getting? Is this kind of going back to like, make sure it's got your name on it and things like that? Because I feel like there's a lot of misconception around that. And I also think there's some people that are exploiting others by giving them not as much of the medication. Like maybe they're not giving them the 0.25 of the medication. Totally. They're giving them like less. and then these to keep them from having side effects. Like we're seeing that with some compound or some med spas and things like that. They're really doing things in a bad way and giving, in fairness, compound pharmacy a bad name, right? So, like, what's up with that? Can you explain that?
I think Dr. Rosen touched on it a little earlier, and it's a pet peeve of mine too. It's everything that should come out of a pharmacy should be labeled with the strength and the dose. How many milligrams, how many mLs per ml is it, and what's your dose? And I think too many people, I see too many people get caught up in, well, my sister's using 2 units and I'm using 4 units.
Right.
Well,
I see what you're saying.
It depends. The units. It depends on where you're getting it from, who's making it, what the concentration is. So if the two, in that example, Susie may be doing 2 units and her sister's doing 4 units, but if they're getting it from 2 different places and they're making it 2 different ways, they may be getting exactly the same dose. So people get caught up on units
the
as
milliliters and units.
It needs to be institutionalized. Like we need to make it from this podcast out to the community. That when you talk about your dosage, you talk about it in milligrams.
Milligrams. That's
milligrams delivered,
not
milligrams.
Units.
Milligrams of medication in whatever volume you're taking. So when people tell me like my dose is 20 ml, I'm like, no, that's not your dose. That's the volume your dose is delivered in.
Think about it like milk, right? Like fat-free milk, you're going to get no fat. If you're getting 3% milk, that is a very high fat content.
Love that.
So if you're trying to get the same amount of fat content in your milk, you're going to have different amounts of milk.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thank
you. I've mentioned, so many, different, medical conferences where even the physicians are teaching it in units. And there's give your patients 4 units, give your patients 2 units. And you really got to go back and really kind of unlearn a lot of people. And it's what's your dose? How many milligrams? And then don't get caught up in the amount that you're getting in terms of the amount of fluid that is in, because it may be irrelevant when it comes to the dose that you need, because it may be different than what somebody else is getting down the street.
That's great.
And the follow up on that question of when you have a question is you should always be able to either contact your prescriber or contact your pharmacy. And if you can't do either of those things, then you shouldn't take it.
Yeah, you shouldn't take it.
And if you can't get a straight answer, or you don't feel like you're getting a straight answer, that's another red flag that you're not in the right spot.
Great. Good. I like it.
And
I love answers. I love answers.
That was one of our questions, because we're seeing in the conversations on social media, I've got this amount of units or this amount of milliliters. So it's not consistent across the board. And that leads me to my last question of when you're using a compound pharmacy. For our last question for me is, what should you be, looking for when researching a compound pharmacy? And, and in terms of compound salts, why are they so dangerous?
So like certifications, you mean?
That's two totally different questions.
I'm sorry.
All right, start with the first one.
Look, my bad.
But I think a lot of it goes back to I think some of the thoughts on who's regulating pharmacies, and when you start looking at compounding pharmacies, I think a good place to look is from the accreditation standpoints. What national boards or what national organizations are they accredited by? There's several. The NABP, National Association Board of Pharmacy, does some accreditations. PCAB, PCAB, Pharmacy Compounding Association Boards. I think that's the right acronym. What all the letters stand for.
Do they have a website?
Yep. Do they have a website? Can you Google them when you pick up the telephone? Are you talking to somebody? Every state has a pharmacy license registration. You can look them up by the state. I think a great place to start, just from trying to find the ones that might stand out from the crowd, might be a better option, or to look or to kind of start with that accreditation piece and then kind of work from there, because the accreditation bodies will take all of that other information, the state board requirements, the USP requirements, the FDA requirements, and they'll put them into that certification compliance mold there, so that if they have those certifications, then from those national bodies, that's a great indicator that they are on the up and up, and probably head and shoulders above somebody who's not doing it that particular way.
Awesome.
And let me start the conversation about semaglutide salts, and Dr. Myra and Dr. Ripley, please jump in.
Please, thank you.
But there's clearly the message put out there that semaglutide salt is some sort of bad thing, as if it's like poison.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's for sure what it sounds like.
As if there's semaglutide and then there's semaglutide salt, and one is like a lower caliber of the other. Yes. And I don't think that any semaglutide that is manufactured and distributed to patients wasn't at some point a semaglutide salt. I'm going to put that out there. Okay. Because as far as I understand things, and I may be wrong, making a salt version of a medication is a way that you can transport that medication as a powder in a stable, non-reactive situation. Like table salt is a salt. It's not highly reactive. It can sit in a jar, nothing happens to it. But when you add water to it, the sodium comes off the chloride ion, and then you get different ions with different properties, like hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide, and so a salt is just a stable way to have a medication. And I would suspect that any medication that's branded at some point in its production life was a salt. And I think that it was sort of put out there that compounds are using salts, because I suspect they are, prior to the dilution of that medication and that preparation of that medication, whether it's with sterile water or saline, it is in a salt form. But the same exact thing is happening in the branded medication. I was wondering if either of you could comment on that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Wow.
So I think maybe sometimes when you're saying with salts, because I guess my first perception of that is you think table salt, and so you're immediately thinking, oh, it's not safe. That's
or bath salts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's too. You went there.
Like my brain's going to reconstitution. Like my brain's going, okay, it's salt, and then you add water and like that. Like I don't know, because I don't do compound. If I have to, I would. But I think that's something that we're sick, we need medicine. There's nothing wrong with that, But if you when I hear salts, and this is just like typical social media bullshit. I'm just gonna say it, right? Like you hear these things and things start rolling, and like, let's talk about what the actual truth is. So that makes a lot of sense to me, that when you have something that you're trying to ship, like especially if it's from like another country or store, like for a long period of time, to be able to then use it in its active form, that you would have it like that. But do we want to be receiving it as a salt? I think that's probably the question, is like, when you get your from a compound pharmacy, am I going to open up and see salts that I'm going to have to mix together? Is that what I need to stay away from? And it sounds like from our earlier conversation, perhaps.
Yeah.
So tell me more.
I think that's where the danger comes in, because that salt form never went through clinical trials the same way that Ozempic and Wegovy did. And so we know what Ozempic and Wegovy do in your body, and we have a fairly good understanding of the side profile there, but we don't know that for the salt form. So
okay, that makes more sense.
But Dr. Ripley, when you add water or saline to the salt form, doesn't it become semaglutide, indistinguishable from any semaglutide that you would have?
Yeah, I think that's the thought process, and I think it goes back. Maybe
giving yourself your semaglutide salt, which hasn't been studied, you're actually, once it's reconstituted, you're giving yourself semaglutide.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back a little bit to what Dr. Myra had mentioned, that in theory, yes, but that's not what was in the studies, and that's not what was studied. So, could you say that with 100% certainty? No, you really couldn't, because that's not how it was studied. But from a chemical standpoint, could you argue it from a chemical reaction? Here's what happens when you add water. It's going to get rid of that sodium salt molecule that's on it, and it's going to cleave it off, and you're going to end up with semaglutide. From a chemical standpoint, probably. I think more from what we know, what we can prove, and what's been proven. I think maybe we really just don't know. We can't.
We don't know that the semaglutide in the study wasn't a semaglutide salt before it was reconstituted and injected.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And that's a great question, because the way, and honestly, I don't know the answer. I don't know the direct answer to that, because I know when you have, let's say, when you have compounded semaglutide, when you're making a semaglutide from a compounded semaglutide, or you're getting it from Wegovy, they're using the base form, not the salt form of semaglutide. And you can get semaglutide sodium, or you can get semaglutide that doesn't have the salt attached to it, and you can make a solution in either way. I don't know, when you go back and you start looking at all the studies, did they only use that? Was it a salt at some point? That I don't know.
Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense. It's just like you said, it's like grabbing onto that all salts are bad is not necessarily a thing, but maybe all salts, if you were having to mix things up, which we've already decided is probably not a best practice from our experts here, doing anything on your own is probably not the best thing. So
in general, when we're talking about chemistry, salt forms are a very important part of medicine in general. There's a lot of things that are in salt forms that you take, and it can do anything from adding the salt form increases, or making it a salt form can increase one drug's absorption, and it may be how that's therapeutic, is that it may be a salt form where the base form gets degraded in the body and it never gets to the target cells. It can change flavor profiles. It can make it more or less water soluble. So I think from a chemical standpoint, and salt forms in itself aren't bad. It's just a matter of when you're looking at compounded semaglutide, and I think where a lot of the bad press started coming from on semaglutide salts was, I think some of the thought process early was, well, there's semaglutide salt out there, and it's okay to compound with, and that gets some of the compounding pharmacies maybe around some of the FDA regulations and that kind of stuff. And I think that's where
and that's totally wrong. Because I mean, it's a leap that you'd think someone would make, but if you look at the patents, for semaglutide, they also include semaglutide salt, semaglutide in a base form, semaglutide in an ester form. So it's not any way to skirt patent protections.
I see what you're saying.
I see.
Okay. They wouldn't know that because they probably haven't read the patent paperwork for semaglutide.
Yeah.
But
when they're talking about
whatever you do. If you get semaglutide that says not for human consumption, that's probably not something you should be injecting.
And what is that, y'all? Where's that coming from? Is that from the studies they were using on the rats that got the bad things? What is it?
Yeah. Where does that come from?
Who else is going to consume it? I don't understand.
They're still doing research on all of this stuff. There is still chemicals that exist for research use.
And I think and I think in a simple term, semaglutide and a lot of these other peptides are small molecules. They're pretty easy to synthesize in a lab, and there's a lot of lab companies out there who can form a business that is not regulated by the FDA if they call it a research grade peptide, and it's. Quite frankly, it's very easy for them to make. It's very easy for them to test it. It's very easy for them to show you, hey, it's 100 or 99.7% semaglutide, whatever it is. But basically what it comes down to is they figured out that little loophole that they can run a business, call it a research grade peptide, and it doesn't go through the FDA. It doesn't go through any other state board regulations. You're basically signing off as a patient or as a consumer saying, yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing my own research, and they have to call it research grade. And then you did run into, you got bad apples in every profession. You run into compounding pharmacies, or even offices, med spas, physicians, whatnot, using the not for human use, the research grade, as their what they were putting in their compounded semaglutide, basically because it was cheap.
Right, because it's going to come cheaper because they don't have to go through all of the hoops that a compound pharmacy truly does, or that a factory producing semaglutide for human consumption has to do. And it's brilliant because think about the way it offloads liability, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
This isn't what Dr. Ripley's saying is, this isn't like someone taking a jar of semaglutide for a rat study and like stealing it and then selling it to a doctor's office. These are companies that are making semaglutide to capitalize on the demand, and by putting a label on it that says not for human consumption, they get around having to be accredited to make semaglutide for human consumption. And then if there's any problem that a human being develops from ingesting that semaglutide, they have automatic protection from liability, because they'll say, well, we labeled it as not for human consumption and you consumed it, so anything bad that happened to you, we can't be held liable. So they can completely shift all liability. So it's a brilliant way to sort of, exactly like you said, get around the system and exploit a loophole in the system where they don't have any oversight and they escape all liability. So it's super shady black market from that perspective.
Yeah. And then you also got to think about, from a safety perspective, you're talking about, you're going to reconstitute it at home, which we already covered that pitfall. And then you're trusting the runaround people to assure that you're getting a sterile product. There's no supervision, there's no oversight to show that it's a sterile product. So you're just starting to compound, or probably a better term, or you're starting to kind of see where a lot of those layers of risk start coming in. On
like those ones you mentioned earlier,
research grade or reconstituting at home, and just a lot of unnecessary risk just to save a few bucks.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff going out there. I think this clears a lot of things up. I think that's really interesting too, what you said about like looking on the label, like the fact that it should say like the units. I want everybody to remember this going forward, because if you come to my live, I'm going to point you to this episode, and because you will. And if you come here, because I think that people don't realize what it is. A lot of this is because nobody tells people. Like, you get this medication, whether your doctor prescribes it for you or you decide to go to a med spa or something, like that's why the community is so big and so popular. It's because there's not enough like direct oversight. And there's not enough obesity specialists. There's not, enough bariatric doctors. There just aren't. Like, it's not really available. And so people are having to get all this information. So I hope that like what we've provided here today would, give people a little more know-how when they're making these decisions. I had one last question, and I think we may have touched on it in like a corner, but we hear a lot of like gym bros using semaglutide peptides. What's the difference in the things we're talking about and peptides? Like, what equals peptides? Because I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, peptide is just a string of amino acids. If I remember my
semaglutide is a peptide. Tirzepatide is a peptide. Okay. All of these fall under the category of peptide.
Insulin's a peptide.
Right.
Okay.
We could talk about AOD 9604, right? Yeah. That's a peptide.
Can we? I don't know. What is that? Tell me about AOD 9604.
It's a peptide. It's a peptide. It's a peptide that was developed by a pharmaceutical company about 20 years ago. It's insulin is made from proinsulin, right? Proinsulin is a peptide, and it just means it's longer than insulin with other stuff on it. And then the body cleaves it, meaning it divides that peptide into smaller pieces. And sometimes the piece that gets broken off has its own activity. Okay, so then you have insulin, and then you have the thing that came out off of the insulin. And AOD 9604 is a peptide that is a portion of human growth hormone. So they were doing a lot of research in human growth hormone. Obviously, it was used in the 70s in bodybuilding a lot, and people theorized that a portion of it also broke down fat. It caused lipolysis. And they specifically were looking for a medication as an obesity treatment that would burn fat but not add muscle, which would be like a reconstituted human growth hormone would do. So how do you just take the part of human growth hormone that burns fat without the building muscle part, and then use that for people suffering from obesity? It would be like a magic pill that would cause them to start metabolizing their fat. And they developed it, and they synthesized it, and they tested it on rats, and boom, it worked. Like, these rats lost 20% of their weight on AOD 9604. And then they rolled it out for early phase human trials, and they were able to prove no impact on humans. And one of the main reasons is because the rat receptor for AOD64, or for the lipolysis part of human growth hormone, is different than the human version of that. And so the impact that it had on rat brain was not replicatable on human brain.
Interesting.
And so the company gave up on the medication, and they stopped producing it, and the patent ran out. And so people are able to synthesize this peptide because peptides can be synthesized relatively easy in laboratories. And so they synthesize this peptide, and then they capitalize on this one rat study, and they tell people it's a magic drug to help you burn fat. And for anyone who claims that it helps build muscle, because some people are using it in like gym bros, will swear by it, but it was specifically designed to not build muscle.
Yeah.
Like that was part of its planned design.
Is it related to the
and the say again?
What is it related to? What I always think of the gym bros also talking about the human growth hormone, the HGH.
It's part of
HCG.
It's part of. Oh, it's not related to HCG.
Okay.
That's human chorianotropic hormone. Human gonad. I'd have to look it up, but it's definitely not HGH, which is human.
Not the same thing. Good. You got it. Yeah.
Not the same thing. So, and there, if you look on the internet, you can find the person who developed this compound for the company saying like, these are black market distributors. They have no relation to the company. The company is not making this medication or this peptide in any form of production right now. And he was saying like, I feel bad for all these people who are being fooled because like we've done the studies and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Same goes.
The good news is it doesn't really hurt you. It doesn't really hurt you.
Dr. Myra?
The same goes for tesmorelin, which is like the HIV lipodystrophy drug, which is supposed to help with. A lot of people are saying it can be mixed in with semaglutide or tirzepatide for weight loss. It's been tested for weight loss. It's used for HIV-associated lipodystrophy, which is when HIV patients have an abnormal fat distribution change.
Okay.
And it's supposed to help normalize that fat distribution, and it works and is FDA approved for that use case. There is no evidence that anybody's been able to find that it helps independently with weight loss or helping redistribute weight in other people without this HIV-associated lipodystrophy. So.
Okay.
Wow. Yep, and there's a whole cottage industry out there now with the gym bros kind of leading the charge on where our technology.
Who are the gym bros, by the way? I'm sorry.
You don't know the gym bros?
The gym bros, yeah.
Are they like a workout podcast?
Oh yeah.
No,
so do you even lift, bro? That's an actual
Wait a minute.
Instagram handle.
The gym bros. You're
I
in
have
New
no
York,
idea.
Dr. Rosen. You don't know gym bros?
I mean, are they like a
I just,
chain?
like,
Is this a
live
workout chain?
in the
I have no
gym.
idea.
No.
I
it's
Like
swear
they're
to God.
referencing like the group of
It's-
people who like
exactly.
identify as gym bros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
are
love
gym
me
bros
some
just guys who like to go to the gym?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
okay.
like, also inject.
Okay, because it sounded to me like
Like
they were
Guidos.
pushing a bunch, like they were selling these compounds, like they were selling these peptides.
No.
As you can
lot
see,
of-
like
Yeah.
I'm not a gym bro, clearly.
There's a lot of
Oh,
covert
Dr.
selling
Rosen.
and stuff that happens at the gyms too. So
Yeah.
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 Wow.
I think
Well,
I think from a technology standpoint, just a quick peptide. We're able to make so many of these small 2, 3, 5 amino chain peptides that either can or are theorized to trigger certain genes, certain processes, whether it's weight gain or fat loss or whatever it is. And I think that's why you're starting to see it blow up more in a lot of your research grade only areas. We've been able to synthesize these much smaller molecules to have a certain target, and they'll take advantage, like Dr. Rosen, of one study that was done or one thing that might show this or might show that. And we can make those things now. You can make them in a lab, and you can turn around and sell them for research grade. And you kind of see all kinds of different peptides, all kinds of different combinations geared toward anything, everything in the gym. Nowadays, just because we can make it where we couldn't do it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. No. So that's why it seems like they're just like coming up out of the
out
woodwork.
of nowhere.
Because
Or,
it's
Yeah.
Because they're pretty
It's
easy
just
to make now.
exploded.
You just need to buy like a couple fancy lab machines, and you can churn them out anywhere.
Yeah. Well, that'll be the first thing that if someone ever says to me, well, I don't know, making peptides is kind of easy. Like we can mix it at home. I'm gonna be like, no, that's the whole problem. Like, stop it. Go watch episode 19.
Sounds like Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad for like the
Thank you.
2020s.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like a peptide lab in your trailer home.
Yeah. Don't do that.
I've been
Don't do
saying
that.
that it's giving Breaking Bad vibes.
Yeah,
Totally.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think it's important. Like, and we had Dr. Toomer, Dr. Catherine Toomer on one of our episodes. I can't remember which one, 8. And she mentioned that that compound pharmacies were so important, that she was very specific about like all of these things that we're talking about, like why those things were important, but there is such a big need for them. And so I guess what my question is and we need to wrap things up, obviously. But for right now, with everything with the shortage, and I think that it seems like there's going to be intermittent shortages like this for a while. If someone's taking a compound medication and then it comes off shortage, how long can they expect to continue to keep getting that medication? Before will they have to like immediately stop? Or if the company that's then providing it or the compound pharmacy that's providing it, like what does that future look like for them when that changes?
I'll jump in. Of course.
Right.
Of
I knew
course
somebody
he
would.
will. Of course he will.
When in doubt.
We don't know is the short answer.
Okay.
I think that
It's an answer. I got it.
I think that we'll have to find out. Meaning that of course you don't have to stop taking the medication right away.
Right.
Like no one's going to be in your house telling you what you can or can't do.
Right.
And I think that compound pharmacies will continue to try and obtain the medication and to distribute the medication based on prescriptions written for patients. At some point, Novo Nordisk or Eli Lilly will sue these compound pharmacies for patent violation.
Okay.
And then there will be some sort of trial. And that's my prediction that this will have to be tested in a court of law in order to be enforced in any real way. Because if you try and enforce the patent laws when these medications are off shortage, then pharmacies will assert that they're modifying these medications or that doctors need to give these medications in smaller incremental doses, not in the 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, 1.0 aliquots. I have patients who are so sick on a 2.5 Mounjaro but they're just right on a 0.8.
Wow.
And so you can't do that without a
That doesn't
compound
shock me.
pharmacy
Yeah.
giving you that opportunities. And so I think eventually it'll be litigated, and
Yeah.
that's going to be a whole long road, and we'll just
Yeah.
have to wait and see. But for
Thanks,
people who are worried about their medications being taken away in a flash, I don't think it's going to happen like that. I don't think
Okay.
you need to stockpile a year worth of meds in your fridge.
Okay.
You know, that's
Yeah.
my take
Dr.
on
Ripley
it.
says no.
What
Yeah.
do you guys think?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I feel as well.
No. Yeah, I think that's it. And you kind of saw the same thing with a lot of the other peptides that kind of blew up on the compounding pharmacy world for a while. And then it took a while for things to kind of wind down. It took a few FDA warning letters and a few FDA whatnots with different compounding pharmacies to get in and to kind of push to push it in one direction or the other. And it's typically a very slow process. It's not a light switch type thing. Usually it's
Wait a minute. Things in the government are slow? That's madness.
Imagine that. But I agree. It's not, nobody's going to turn the light switch off and everybody quits making it tomorrow and you'll go home like Fred Flintstone at 5 o'clock. It's it'll take a while to iron itself out.
Okay. All right. Well, this was a lovely conversation. Thank you guys for joining us and helping educate our community. We appreciate it so much.
Wow.
Any closing thoughts before I exit you? Stage left or right or left?
No, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yes. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. Really appreciate it.
And this was great. And it was a great opportunity and a great conversation with colleagues and really important people in the community doing important work, educating and advocating. So keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. I was thinking about you guys, but that's sweet. Thank you.
I know, right?
We appreciate what you all are doing as well.
Yes. We're so thankful for you. I feel like
from the pharmacist perspective, I'd say talk milligrams.
Talk milligrams.
Quit doing,
from now on.
Quit doing it. Talk about your dose. Talk milligrams.
That's what I'm going to say every time. It's like Dr. Ripley says.
Talk milligrams.
Talk
milligrams. Yes. Awesome. All right. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, my Virgo.
Oh, that was so great. God, I learned so much.
Take notes. I will
be
listening to this again because I need to take notes.
I think that I can do like a descript, which is like it can like have everything scripted.
Yeah.
And then like edit it accordingly. You know what I mean? I think I can do that because I think all of specifically the like, I think when we're talking, that's about the peptides, but we're talking about like the certifications and like and I want to make sure we have those like written out for people because there are people that will want to, really geek out on that and like understand. I'm sure we're some of them. So yeah. But I think it's important. I got a lot of things clarified and I know a lot of people in the community have asked me those questions. So I think, did you guys feel good about it?
Misconceptions were cleared up.
A lot of misconceptions.
Whenever I hear salts, I think of like what Dr. Rosen said, bath salts, but I'm thinking of like a witch's cauldron, putting in her salt and stuff. Like it's just, that's the immediate, or
I'm thinking like crystals, like I'm thinking like Breaking Bad situation, like, and that's the thing is like, we hear this narrative, we hear these spins, and I think Dr. Rosen makes a really good point that like we're hearing certain things from, from the manufacturers, right? Or we're hearing from like, Eli Lilly, right? And they're saying, oh, like we don't do that. Oh, blah, 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 and
right.
And I think, but why are we listening to them again? I forget, like, because clearly they have, they want to make money and all the things. But I thought it was really fascinating.
Made the medication. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh yeah, right? And then how they shot themselves in the foot by creating this vehicle to put.
Well, I love the Canal Street reference.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Reference.
Yeah. Yes, that little guy right there. Yeah.
Look, this little thing right here.
That's the fault. It's not diabetes versus obesity.
Exactly, Kat. It's not diabetes versus obesity. It's not.
It's
like
we've learned.
Pen. It's the stupid pen. Let's go back to one pen. Although let's face it, like they had a problem with Ozempic even with one pen. So I think it just
Right.
seems to be, and that makes sense why they're spending so much time. I think we are seeing in the newest studies of like figuring out how to optimize the oral ones, right? How do we get, the optimal doses from like the oral and what kind of, that's what Dr. Myra's done several videos about that recently.
Well, they're
So I think
easier
those are
to
good.
produce.
Yeah, because they're easier to produce. You don't have to worry about that raw material. Well, you don't have to worry about I don't want to say raw materials because that's stuff in the medication, but you don't have to worry about the pens, right? The actual, physical things. So I think that's something to consider going forward. And like, as long as it worked well, as long as it was the same medication and I could tolerate it and it was, I would do it,
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I hope this helps people feel a little bit more clear and at least they'll know what questions to ask and red flags and things to look for, if they are in a situation. And and to be clear, like, I just want to make sure everybody understands because I know how the girls feel about this. But we want everybody to have access to this medication affordably. We would love for everyone to take the retail, which is what Janine came with a really way to take the retail. But we know that not everybody can. We know that most people can't. We know that is the lack of accessibility and affordability is a really big problem. And for sure, these, like, I don't want to say designer meds, but I've heard someone say that recently. These medications, right? These very expensive medications, they shouldn't just be for the elite, or the lucky. They shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But we know. But if you are able to find access to these medications in a safe way, and you are able to afford them at least a little bit more, then I hope that this does help you because we want everyone to be safe and to be healthy. And as long as you're able to do that, you will always see resources from the Plus SideZ. We will always give you can choose which ones you use, but we will always give you resources. Okay. So I thought it was a lovely discussion, even though I have like my new mic. I feel like I could get a little crazy with going in and out like this. It's a good time, like
your special effects.
I'm getting my mic this week because I need a mic.
You do need a mic. You need one special for your iPad, right?
I'm going to see if I can find a pink one.
Oh, cute. I'm
Barbie sure you can.
I'm sure you can, Janine. If anybody can find 100%. A pink mic, it's you. You and Delta Barbie.
Yeah. Pink and Delta Barbie.
Yes.
We're going to be chilling over here.
Yeah, you're going to have to wear head things like me and look silly. That's how it works.
Not silly. I think I want one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. My hair looks real flat, and like I'm from Georgia. I need some bigger hair. I'm not Texas, but I need it up there. The higher hair, the closer to heaven. I need a little puffier. It's like,
yeah.
I'm pulled back in my man bun.
Yeah, it's not a man bun if you're wearing a cat.
Right, it's a man bun. I know,
it's
right?
Cat bun. It's a cat bun.
Because I need a haircut so badly, but.
What I was thinking we should do? We should do non-scale victories sometimes when we do our sign-offs. Like, hey, what was your NSV this week? Stuff like that. Do you guys have any? Because we could do it today if you wanted. Danger.
Let's see.
I don't know.
Oh.
Okay, I'm listening.
I went to Zara this
What's
weekend.
Zara? I don't even know what Zara is.
Zara at Lenox Square Mall.
Okay.
And because the Barbie movie premiered this weekend, I was able to purchase one of the Barbie t-shirts in a size medium.
That's great. That's totally an NSV. I love it.
Thank you. I was excited.
I'm going to see a picture of that. I need to see a picture of it. What about Kat? Have you had one lately?
I'm pretty sure I have, but it's been kind of a whirlwind this week. It's been quite a bit nutty. But I'll think of one for next week.
Okay.
But you guys, we've always talked about how I don't have a Prince quote.
Yes.
So I have one today.
You have a Prince quote today. Okay. In lieu of the NSV.
In lieu of the NSV, I actually thought of this. So it's we call it a deep track from Prince, However Much You Want. He did with his then wife, Maite.
Okay.
Or were they married? I don't know. Anyway, who cares? The lyrics were pretty awesome. I'm full of random useless pop culture information, not just about Prince either. Sidebar, Kim, when I worked at Career Builder, when you were there, one of my teams that I worked in, they said Kat is the best popular culture referencer ever. So that was my award. So
okay.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
All right. So
that's an NSV.
It is. How much can you get if you don't put, excuse me, how much can you get if you just put your mind to it? How
Yeah.
much can you gain if you don't struggle to get through it? How strong is your faith if you don't take time to renew it? Listen now, you've got to make haste. This is the time. You've got to do it. And then, oh, I had to do the Prince one. Anyway,
I love it. I love it.
however much you want. That's song. That's the song.
I love it.
However much you want.
I had an NSV. I had a few NSVs. I'm having a lot since Mounjaro. Shocking. I know we're all so shocked. But mine is now I want to blanket statement. My husband has always thought I was fine, but he's never seen me this small ever. Like in all the we've been together 20 years. He's never seen me this small. And I was just standing in the kitchen wearing basically my clothes are kind of like the ones I was wearing, kind of hanging off me, but I don't care. I'm home, And he came over and he goes, you're just glowing. I've just never seen you this small and this beautiful. And I always thought you were, he loves me no matter what size I am. Like I've always had to beat his ass off with a stick, but it was just like, I could see it in his face, like how into me he was. And that made me, and like, again, he loves me in every size, but it was very cool in that moment to see it and know that my partner and my bestie, right, has never seen me as healthy as I am now. And he's known me since I was 20, So it's like, it was a cool thing. It was a nice NSV, I thought.
That's sweet.
Yeah, totally.
That's really sweet.
That's awesome.
Yes. So we won't do classic sign-offs. We'll just do that instead of our quotes.
I'll
But
think
yeah,
of some
so
NSVs.
that's cool. Yeah, you gotta like at least add some up and just throw them in whenever. I don't know. I
know.
just thought it would be a little more fun since we always do our sign-offs. And I'm pretty sure if I look at the stats, people are like, and they just leave.
Look, gotta go.
Gotta go. Peace out. Yeah.
Well, that's why you
Anyway.
got the different one.
Yeah. That's good. You're the one that
Anyway.
always shakes it up. We're just basic bitches over here, like with the same old stuff. It's all right. We're learning. We're evolving.
We aren't basic.
I think it's my undiagnosed ADD in my life. That's all it is. So.
Yes. All right. Well, we will sign off for the night. We will see you guys next week. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please comment, share, like all the things. If you have not subscribed, please do so. All of these things help. Please also know that we do have a page where if you want to make a donation to the podcast, you can. Many people have asked for that. There's a PayPal link that are in the notes and on the website. And also we have a merch store. We have a merch store.
You want to get something in exchange for donating.
Yes. That's right. That's why we started that to begin with, because I feel super uncomfortable letting people donate to the podcast. But lots of people were like, please give us the space to do it. We want to do it. And it's very kind. It's very kind. Yes, we appreciate it so much. It really does help. Every little bit does help. So we're so thankful for you, community, and new members of our community, hopefully, that are watching and have been. We've gotten so many on YouTube that have found us that are new. And the audio podcast is taking off quite a bit as well. It was already pretty steady, but it's quite a bit now. I think we're probably at 2,000 downloads a week, so it's quite, yeah. So that's pretty good.
Awesome.
It grows by a couple hundred a week. It really does. So it's going really good. And then of course the YouTube grows like every hour. The YouTube is really getting up there. So we're doing good things, right? Do good things, get good things, help people. That's what we want to do. So help us in every way that you can with watching and sharing and engaging. All of those things help the plus sides. You don't have to go and buy something if you don't want to. You don't have to donate if you don't want to, but consuming the content and reacting and engaging with the content helps us significantly. So please do that. And if there are commercials, because we finally got some commercials, like just let them play. It helps us. It helps us, like it does. So we're so thankful for everyone, and thankful, of course, to our doctors. And we will see you guys next week. Hasta la pasta. Bye.